Alrighty.
This call is being recorded.
This meeting is being called to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, pursuant to Public Laws 1975, Chapter 231. This agenda is complete to the extent known and was sent to the Trenton Times and the Trentonian newspapers, posted on the first floor bulletin board in City Hall, and also placed on the Trenton City's website and filed in the city clerk's office. Formal action will be taken. Roll call, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Blakely. Ms. Caldwell-Wilson.
Present.
Mr. Harrison. Mr. Michelle.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Vaughn. Ms. McBride.
Present.
We're going to take a roll call of the directors present. Adam Cruz, Business Administrator.
Present.
Colin Curry, Assistant Business Administrator.
Present.
Yoshi Manal, Chief of Staff. John Morelli, Director of Law Department.
Present.
Edward Kaloji, Special Counsel for the Council. I think he is present. Sheila Coley, Director of Department of Police.
Present.
Derek Sawyer, Director, Department of Fire.
Present.
Benjamin Delisle, Director, Department of Housing and Economic Development.
Present.
Shakir Abdul Ali, Director, Department of Health and Human Services. Wahab Al-Matiri, Director, Department of Public Works.
Present.
Maria Richardson, Director of Recreation.
Present.
David Smith, Acting Director of Water and Sewer. Janet Schoenhart, Acting Director, Department of Finance.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Did Councilman Blakely, Harrison, or Vaughn come onto the line?
Blakely is here.
Thank you.
Vaughn is here.
Thank you. So I'm in the process now of muting everyone, so I ask that you please keep yourselves muted until appropriate time.
Too much going on. You know, if I want to ride that.
And that's Mr. Wanda Wilson. Okay, so we're ready to move on with the agenda.
Yes, we are. Invocation, Mr. Harris.
Yes. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace and mercy that you have shown on this city of Trenton. We ask for your continued wisdom and guidance to this governing body and this mayor as they try to move this city forward in a productive and prosperous manner. Grant us grace and wisdom. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mm-hmm. That sounds like Councilman Harrison. Is Councilman Harrison on the line?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Okay, great. Mr. Harris?
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. So first on the docket this evening are the approval of the minutes from the April 2nd, 2020 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Council President McBride. Is there a second?
Santiago.
Mr. Santiago. Mr. Blakely? Mr. Blakely? Ms. Caldwell Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes. Yes for.
Mr. Michelle,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn,
Yes.
Ms. McBride,
Yes.
and I did get Mr. Blake recorded yes vote. Next are the acceptance of 15 items of communications, 0 petitions, and 1 report. Is there a motion to accept the communication, petitions, and 1 report from the city clerk's office approving the monthly revenue for the month of April, funds collected by my staff in the amount of $3,299.50?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McBride, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Blakely,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Michelle,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Ms. Vaughn,
Yes.
Ms. McBride.
Yes.
And the communications, petitions, and reports have been accepted. Next on the agenda is unfinished business, which is our ordinance being presented for public hearing and second reading or possible adoption. First on the docket is
Council President?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Harris.
Okay, can I have a comment? I have to say something. The hiring and the approval of Mr. Barry was legally. Additionally,
Wait a minute.
You're letting me do a comment.
That's not appropriate, Mr. Harrison. That's not appropriate. Why? You have to do that in your civic comment. You can bring that back to the floor, but we need
I'm doing an opening comment. That's what I'm trying to.
No, this is
opening comment regarding this.
This is for the ordinance of Mr. Harrison.
Right, but I was trying to do this before that.
No, that's not appropriate. You have to wait until either civic comment or a down the road. But we are doing the business of the city now. So, Mr. Harris, continue.
yes. So I declare open the public hearing on ordinance number 20-33, which is a bond ordinance providing for improvements to Hetzelfield Park in and by the city of Trenton in the county of Mercer, state of New Jersey, and appropriating $1 million therefore and authorizing the issuance of $250,000 in bonds for notes to the city to finance a part of the cost thereof. If there is anyone that wishes to speak to this ordinance, you may unmute yourself or identify yourself in the chat section. Make your comments after you state your name and address for the record. And if there are none, then is there a motion to close the public comments? Or the public hearing? Moved by Councilwoman Caldwell Wilson. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Blakely,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Michelle,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn,
Yes.
Ms. McBride.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 20-33?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rodriguez, seconded by Ms. Caldwell Wilson. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Michelle,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn,
Yes.
Ms. McBride.
Yes.
Ordinance number 20-33 has been properly adopted, and this ordinance will be published as provided by law. I declare open the public hearing on ordinance number 20-38, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 222 titled Rent Control and establishing Section 222-20 landlord identity registration of the Code of the City of Trenton. If anyone wishes to speak to this subject, either please identify yourself in the chat portion or unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and make your comments to the governing body. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes. Second. Hello?
Moved by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Ms. McBride. Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Before, I think a citizen wanted to chime in.
No,
I
that,
heard
that,
a-
session, that session was passed. This is the vote.
Okay, well, yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 20-38?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Harrison, seconded by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
And Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Ordinance number 20-38 has been properly adopted and will be published in accordance with law. And next is the public hearing for ordinance number 20-39, which is the off-road vehicle regulations and ordinance amending the city code to create chapter 302 vehicles off-road to impose clear restrictions, guidelines, and penalties for the use of all-terrain vehicles, dirt bikes, and snowmobiles within the city limits. If anyone wishes to speak on this subject, either identify yourself in the chat portion or unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and make your comments to the governing body.
Yes, hi. My name is Dennis Wendell, 7 Renfrew Avenue in the West Ward. I just wanted to speak out again in support of this ordinance. It was nice to see a new ordinance come back after the one was voted down last year and had support from the police director as well as the council as it passed unanimously. I hope to see that carry forward tonight through the second reading as well. So thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the governing body? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McBride, seconded by Ms. Vaughn. Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
And Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 20-39?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Blakely, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Ordinance number 20-39 has been properly adopted and will be published in accordance with law. Next is ordinance 20-40. I declare open a public hearing on ordinance 20-40, gas station operating hours adjustment, and ordinance amending chapter 146 licensing, Section 146, Hours of Operation of the Code of the City of Trenton. If anyone wishes to speak to this subject, please identify yourself either in the chat portion or unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and make your comments to the governing body. Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance 20-40?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
An ordinance number 20-40 has been, the public hearing for ordinance 20-40 is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 20-40?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
And Ms. McBride?
Yes.
An ordinance 20-40 has been properly adopted and will be published in accordance with law. Next on the agenda is scheduled for the public comment on new business only. If anyone wishes to speak to any item on the docket pertaining to resolutions or ordinances, you may either identify yourself in the chat portion or unmute yourself, and you may address the body at this time on any item that is on the docket pertaining to new business. Seeing none, shall we continue with the new business?
Yes.
Next for your consideration would be resolution number 20-249. An amended version of this resolution was sent out to the governing body very late this afternoon, and I trust that everyone has received it. It is the resolution to approve the fiscal year 2020 municipal current fund budget amendments for the city of Trenton. The budget amendments are being presented by the administration. Once you accept the budget, which you did several months ago, then it goes through an amending process. If you approve all these amendments this evening, the amended budget would then be sent back to the DCA for final review and approval. You're not actually adopting the budget this evening. If once those amendments are finalized, then you will get final advice from the DCA, who will give you instructions on what is good, what is not good. Those instructions will be incorporated into the final budget document. And then if the body is okay with that, then you would go ahead and adopt the final budget as amended. I hope everyone is clear on this process. If any members of the body have any question about that, I'd be willing to answer them at this time, or maybe for the administrator or acting director of the Department of Finance.
I have a comment for the directors. You know, I would like to know if they understand that there's going to be some costs there, if they are aware of that.
Should I respond, or?
You can, Mr. Cruz.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, Council, and everyone on this call. Yes, the directors have been made aware of all of the cuts that are taking place, and instructions have been given to them to make sure that that we that we continue spending at the rate that the new budget amendment is actually being presented this evening. We have taken some measures. We feel that the numbers that are being presented to you tonight are actually numbers that the city can continue operating for the remainder of this fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. So we're looking at approximately a month and a half of operations of this fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you.
So just for your final information for the governing body, these amendments will all be published in accordance with law. You will have a public hearing scheduled to be held at your June 2nd meeting, and then you are able to adopt anytime thereafter, depending on determination by the DCA. So if there are no further questions or comments, or is there a motion to introduce these amendments, resolution number 2020-249?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Blakely, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Mushal,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn,
Yes.
and Ms. McBride.
Yes.
And resolution number 20-249 has been approved. Next is resolution 20-250, which is a resolution to approve the fiscal year 2020 municipal utility budget amendment for the city of water and water utility. Is there a motion to approve resolution number 20-250?
I don't see that.
So moved.
Yeah, but what is that ordinance under? I don't see it, Mr. Harris.
That is the resolution to approve the FY20 municipal utility budget amendment.
Okay.
That was sent
Second.
out yesterday along with the amended docket.
Okay. Thank you.
Moved by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? You ready for the vote?
Yes.
Mr. Blakely,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Mushal,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn,
Yes.
Ms. McBride.
Yes.
And resolution number 20-250 has been approved. And next is resolution number 20-251, is a resolution to approve the fiscal year 2020 municipal utility budget amendment for the city of Trenton sewer utility. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Blakely. Is there any discussion?
The question that I had, Mr. Harris, to this is that if the administration has taken the advice of the Department of Community Affairs, where this the Water and Sewer Department is concerned. Mr. Cruz?
Yes, all of the budget amendments have been submitted to DCA, and based on our communications, with them, there hasn't been any concerns as to the numbers that are being submitted.
No, that's not the question, Mr. Cruz. The question was, did the administration accept the recommendation from DCA where the water and the sewer was concerned? That was the question.
Can I answer that? This is Janet Schoenhardt.
Janet, go ahead.
The DCA did not make any recommendations on the amendments that we presented to them. They did not make any recommendations for
There's a lot of interference.
Yes, Mr. Blakely, that's coming from you. I'm going to mute you temporarily.
The DCA did not have any recommendations for the water or sewer utility. I submitted the amendments, and they had no problem. They didn't make any recommendations to change anything. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just be okay, let me just go down the list here. Sewer and water. It was their recommendation to adjust that number. The DCA recommendation was $1,500,000. So you said that they didn't make a recommendation, but I have the recommendation in front of me, so I'm just not clear.
That was administration. That was based on us making those changes. That was administration making those changes. So the DCA had no input on it, and when we presented it to them, they were okay with the changes that administration has made.
Mrs. Shonahar,
Yes.
I'll talk when this amendment comes back, but it's very clear that DCA sent their recommendation over, and this clearly states that DCA sent their recommendation over for the sewer and water because the administration had the $2,500,000, and DCA said that it should be reduced by $1,500,000. So I don't understand when you said potential line item decreases was sent over from DCA, but I won't have this conversation now because we're going to wait for your amendments to go over. So I could yield until those amendments come back from DCA. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll have that conversation.
All righty.
Okay, so is there any other discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
And we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Blakely?
You muted him, Mr. Harris. Did he unmute himself?
Mr. Blakely was having computer issues. And Mr. Blakely, are you there?
Yes, I am. Do you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fawn?
Yes.
And Ms. McBride?
Yes.
And resolution number 20-251 has been approved. Next for your consideration would be the consent agenda. I put out a request for anything else additional to be roll called, and I didn't get any response back, so I'm going to presume.
Yes, Mr. Harris, I do want a roll call on 20-243 and 20-244.
Okay.
And I want a roll call on 20-218.
Okay. So then next for your consideration will be resolution number 20-218, which is a resolution approving the substantial amendment to the FY 2019 Annual Action Plan beginning July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Is there a motion to accept this resolution?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Harris,
Yes.
I just wanted to ask one question, and only one. on the attachment, it has the wide on here, and it said for lunches, I believe for meals for children, and then I was sent something via email saying that that was to supply the children lunches that they no longer receive in school. And I just had a question about that. I just wanted to know if the, well, I have two questions of one statement. I just want to know if the Board of Education had a contract with, I think it's Aramark or some company to provide lunches for the children, or if they did anything at all for the children, the school children during this COVID-19. So that was a question that I had when I seen that the Y was stating that they were doing the lunches for the children. I just wanted to know what the Board of Education was doing, because I thought that someone said that they had a contract to feed all of our children that go to Trenton Public Schools lunches while they were out. Is there anyone that could answer that? No? Okay. So if no one can answer that, I'll move right along to my statement. And this is my statement for 20-218. For all of the organizations.
I couldn't get unmuted.
Okay. Go right ahead, Director.
Yes,
Director Ali.
I believe that the Y is providing food for preschool children. They serve preschool children. The school district is providing food for K through 12.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. And so the other thing that I wanted to say in reference to 20-218 is this. This is for the administration, because there was language in the third paragraph based on what the mayor's authority is as far as the sub-recipients, meaning the nonprofit organizations. I just want to be real clear to anyone in the public or to any agency that will get this first round of money. I want to be clear that if you are on this round to receive this money, and any adjustments to your payments will be monitored by myself. And if there is any drastic changes in those payments, I will not have a problem going straight to HUD. And the second thing is that I don't want to see any of these organizations that is getting this first round of money included in a second round, because there's too many organizations that have been left out. I had spoke to the PEI kids situation on Tuesday evening, and I want to repeat myself about the PEI kids. The PEI kids service our children. The children that they service are children that have been physically, emotionally, and mentally scarred. During this pandemic, we have families of 8 children, 7 children, 6, 5, and on down, that have been in their homes for a long period of time. We have had an uptick in physical abuse, mental abuse, and emotional abuse. And to not service that area for our children is unacceptable. And so I would like to say again to the administration and to all of the nonprofits on this list, when there is a second round of monies coming down, I do not want to see you on that list. I want to see the organizations that have not been serviced. And that, I will tell you, if these rules and regulations must be followed, and if they're not, I don't have a problem going to HUD myself, because you cannot do and you cannot circumvent what our children and what our families need in this city based on your opinion. It has to be based on the facts of things that are unfolding here in the city. And I thank each and every one of you. And Mr. Harris, you can move on with the vote if no one else has a comment.
Council President, it's Robin Vaughn.
Yes, Councilwoman Vaughn.
Yes, I wanted to speak to 2018 as well. And I agree with all your comments. I just have one question for the business administrator or Mr. Ben Delisle, Director of Housing and Economic Development. Is there going to be a second round, or is this the final round?
This is Ben Delisle. This is the allocations that we have at this time. If any of these funds are not spent, we can reallocate them. And then we also have our 2020 allocation, our normal CDBG allocation that we can use for COVID funding. That would be coming in future meetings.
Okay, but right now, we're not expecting any additional appropriations coming from HUD or federal government related to COVID.
From the CARES Act with CDBG, I do not. This is the allocations that we have received notification of from HUD.
Okay. And then secondly, I just want to say that I, for one, I'm not supportive of this clause that has been put in this resolution, because it does exactly what it says it does. It pretty much will make, if we were to pass it today, the City Council pass this resolution to agree to appropriate these monies to the respective organizations. The mayor has placed a provision in there that says our vote and what we're approving here tonight can potentially be changed. So that means your appropriation and the people of this city has the expectation that what's been appropriated here tonight is going to be appropriated. There's no need for any changes, reductions or increases, or etc. But the third paragraph opens up that opportunity for the mayor. And it reads that the mayor is authorized to execute any documents relating to the substantial amendment to the city's fiscal year 2019 annual action plan, including any subrecipient agreements like Attachment A, or any certifications and assurance documents as may be required by law or which HUD may request in connection with its review of this matter. Attachment A is what the terms are for the appropriation allocation of those funds. So the mayor is saying here, the administration, in introducing this resolution, is saying, okay, this is what we have today, but tomorrow, if I change it, the mayor chooses to change it, he's not going to come back to council, because the council, we are giving him the authorization per this provision number 3. And I will just say to everyone in the public that if you're happy with this, because I haven't gotten any response from the public regarding that clause, and I communicated broadly to my constituents, and if you all are happy with the mayor having that type of power and usurping your council, the 7 people you put in this seat to represent you and to ensure that your dollars get fairly appropriated, then I will stand down. But I have requested repeatedly to the administration to remove that language. Because once this council approves of any resolution or ordinance on this dais, and we get consensus, then that should be it. There should be no clause that overrides the vote of the governing body of the city of Trenton. And this is just, to me, an insult to not only this governing body that was duly elected by the residents of the city of Trenton, but it's a slap in the face to our democratic process. You don't get to override the vote of the people and just discard it with a provision like this. I would expect, as Council President just stated, that if there are changes, go to HUD. But the fact of the matter is, you can go to HUD, you can go to the Attorney General's office. We voted for this. We are telling the mayor it is okay for him to make changes to terms that we agreed on and voted on and passed as a unified governing body. Why even have the resolution? Why even have the vote if he can go tomorrow and change all those allocations? And for that, I will be voting no. Thank you.
Council President, Mr. Frisbee from the Y is actually on the call if you would like him to answer any questions that you may have pertaining to.
No.
Okay.
Council President, may I add some clarity on the amendment?
Mr. Harris, I couldn't hear you.
Council President.
That was just Mr. Delisle asking if he could clarify some comments.
Not at this time, Mr. Harris.
So are there any other comments from the governing body? Ready for the vote?
Yes.
Madam President,
it's just so much noise going on. And
Council President.
Mr. Ward, I'm going to ask you to keep yourself muted. You have a lot of background noise, please.
Is he trying to get in and make a statement?
Yeah, Council President. My question was, who is the school food vendor? Is it Airmark?
Mrs. Ali didn't answer that question if it was Airmark, and I don't know if there's anyone on the line from the Board of Education that could, but that's who I thought it was, Airmark. But there's no one from the Board of Education that asked to speak. Mr. Harris, is Mr. You said that was Mr. Ward. Was he trying to get in to speak to this resolution, or what was that about? Just a lot of noise in his background? Yes. Okay. Question. So, okay. Mr. Ward, are you trying to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Harris? You have a lot of noise in your background.
I'm afraid I have everything turned off. It may be my fish tank you're hearing, and I don't know how I can stop that.
Okay, go right ahead.
Well, my question was on this issue, is this the funds from the CARE Act that's being allocated as well?
Yes, it is.
Well, my question is regarding the Trenton Health Team expenditures for COVID-19 related items. I don't see it listed on the list that is the attachment. First, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, they're getting $500,000 for COVID-19 related work.
No, that is not correct. This is Shakira Abdullahi. That's not correct. They're not getting that money.
Okay. Well, my comment is this. As a resident of the city of Trenton, my top priority, my major concern is to make sure that my health and the health of my family and my fellow Trentonians is protected during this pandemic. And I've been asking all of the official organs exactly what is the COVID-19 testing program for Trenton. While there's been discussion around it, it's clear to me that there is no plan to do universal testing. Although I'm happy to see that the state is now open to the idea of providing testing without a doctor's prescription, which is one of the things we were concerned about that was keeping the numbers of tests low. We have not done the kind of outreach as far as COVID-19 screening and testing that's going to have to be in place. And unless that's included in a budget, I'm afraid that's something that will just fall by the wayside and leave all of us, including our children, vulnerable. There can be no way you can do testing or even try to mitigate this pandemic unless we have widespread universal testing. And by universal, I mean all residents, whether documented or not, should be able to be tested for COVID-19. There's several versions of tests on the line, PCR, rapid testing, all of those. Each one is used in a specific way. So what I'm getting to is that the city of Trenton does have vans that administer health information and vaccinations. And rather than sit and wait for people to come to us to be tested, we should be going to the high density areas. And I'm thinking about Trent Towers and Luther Arms. I'm hearing that there's several cases in Trent Towers and other senior citizen complexes that need to be addressed. And to wait for these people who are not even ambulatory to come to a testing site is not going to work. We have to go to them, and the money has to be allocated for personnel and all the rest in order for these tests to be administered. So it needs to find its way into our city budget, particularly if the CARES Act money is designated for that kind of a purpose. First, you need a plan so that you have an idea what it is you're going to do, and you inform the people when you're going to be there and what's going to be available, and people can then plan on getting tested or making arrangements. So they have to have a plan of action and then the execution of that plan. And I don't see that being formulated with the kind of urgency that this pandemic requires, because time is counting down to school start and all those going back to work and all those other things people have in their lives. And we just simply can't wait to begin the plan in the middle of the summer or some late date. This has to be something that we begin immediately and begin to roll out immediately, because there's going to be expense involved. And it's going to take a lot of coordination and timing, but it's something that has to be done. And what I'm calling on City Council and the Mayor, you have to be our champions on these things.
Mr. Ward, I'm going to have to put you on hold for just one moment, because Council President, this is actually not protocol that you're allowing this type of comment during a presentation of a resolution. And you're opening up.
You know what, I was afraid that maybe they were trying to get in, and when we had when we were asking them to speak and could not get in, and that's why I was like willing to yield, because I did not know whether they had tried to get in and could not get in based on our system, and so that's why I was allowing that. and it was based on the resolution.
Okay, so he was able to get in at this point, so I don't understand why he wouldn't have been able to get in during the other portion, but now there are several other people who are desiring to comment on this matter.
Think of anything that is of a higher priority than our health. Nothing. Because the rest just simply doesn't matter if your health is not taken care of first. So I don't want to go against protocol, and I don't want to step out of line. And I thought that I was speaking in that was germane to the question. So I'm simply asking.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Ward, are you
Yeah, I'll wrap it up.
So can we have others speak to this right now who waiting in queue?
I'm going to wrap up in just a second, and whatever you want to do. I'm simply saying elected representatives have to be our champions in this, because I get the feeling that the many government entities would rather brush past this subject because it's difficult. But you have to be our champions. You got to stand on the wall and advocate for our health, everything else. And I'm just asking my representatives who like are elected to represent me, including the administration, that you need to speak, they need to speak for us and champion us on this issue to make sure that the people of Trenton's health is protected above everything else. Thank you for your time.
So, Mr. Harris,
Are we going back to public comment now?
Well,
they could not get in. And
We're speaking to an ordinance, right? A resolution. They're not allowed to do that?
We already closed the public comment.
that is correct, and it is not protocol to the protocol to permit comments from the public during a presentation.
But my point is that people were trying to get in, and we had technical difficulty. They were trying to get in.
I didn't have any technical difficulties, Mr.
Well,
Woodman.
that's what they're telling us that they had, and you got to believe them, right?
No, he didn't say
Not
that.
gonna listen to
Brian said he had technical difficulty.
he said that
Well,
he
how
was
was
muted
second
and
public comment?
he said he was muted and he could not get in. He said he was put on mute and he couldn't unmute himself. So
But the council president is the one that controls the meeting, not the clerk. So if she wants to open up the floor, she has the right to do that. That is her decision to make, not mine.
I would just let me just do it like this, because it was based on this 218, and I don't want to leave the public out, and I don't want to change the format. So I would just like to apologize to anybody that can't get in on these calls. And if you have a computer, if you would please go to the chat section and let us know that you're trying to get in, because we can see your statement in the chat. So if you would do that, and that would allow Mr. Harris the ability to unmute you if you are muted.
Madam President, Director Sawyer is also ready to address that concern from that resident when the time is appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cruz. And so, Mr. Harris, you can move forward.
So I'm confused now. Are you going to permit other persons?
We're going to stick with the program. But what I would like to do, as we do with because people are saying that they can't get in, and what I would like to do is just be considerate if it's on the resolution, then and they make their way in, we'll hear them because they're having a lot of difficulty. So we're going to move on. But if there's someone that is wanting to speak based on something and they weren't able to get in on one of the resolutions that we're voting on, I would like for them to be able to voice their concerns if it's one of the future resolutions that we're voting on. I think that's fair.
But 2018, it may impact how we vote, right? So we would want to hear the comments on 2018 before we take the vote.
Well, I understand that, Mrs. Vaughn, but process is process, and you just can't
Okay, that's fine.
process at
Well,
whim.
let the public know that then, that we're about to take a vote, and if they have comments that could potentially change any one of our votes, they haven't been able to speak.
Well, the public can hear you loud and clear, so you just notified them that and I am not aware of anyone identifying themselves as having difficulty trying to get in. So you have information that I am not privy to.
Okay, so Mr. Harris, we can move forward. We don't need to go into a debate about the debate.
Council
Okay?
President? Council President? Is Mr. Sawyer going to talk?
Pardon me?
Is Mr. Sawyer going to talk?
No, he said that he would talk at the opportune time, meaning that after we finish the resolutions, then he wanted me to allow him to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes, we could go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Blakely? Mr. Blakely? Ms. Caldwell-Wilson? Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
I just want to say something quickly before I put my vote, is that the way this ordinance has been put forward, there's not enough information, sufficient documentation in place for me to even render a vote. We do not know how these organizations are going to be using this funding. We don't know because the information was never provided. The information was never provided to the council. We asked for the grant request. We asked for the application. We asked how are they planning on using the COVID funding. And we got nothing from the administration, nothing from the Housing and Economic Development Department director. We are voting on a one-pager that has the name of an organization, an amount of money allocated with no substantiating documentation. So my vote is no.
And to clarify, this is a resolution, not an ordinance.
Give me one second.
Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. Resolution 2020-218, it's no.
President McBride? President McBride?
Yes, my vote is yes.
President McBride, I'm voting yes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Blakely. Resolution number 20-218 has passed. Next for your consideration is resolution number 20-243, which is a resolution accepting a bid and awarding a contract to Rustling Paving and Concrete in an amount not to exceed $588,725. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Harris, I would just like to state for 20-243 that after looking at our public employees and the job that they do to put these streets back together and pave these streets, I really have confidence in our crew, and I just believe that, in my opinion, these two contracts that are worth $1 million, to me, our employees that are working almost below the poverty level. There needs to be some type of increase in their pay rate with a union contract, and so that these numbers won't be walking out of the city 588,000, 488,000, and all those numbers keep adding up, and our employees, they can go and apply for food stamps. That is what they take home, with their take-home pay. And to me, this is a slap in their faces when I witness the work that they could do, and then I come back and I see these large contracts going out, and I know that we have employees that can literally go and stand in a food stamp line. This is, to me, is outrageous, and I cannot support it knowing that, and I can't support it knowing that they don't have a contract. I can't support that. So that is why I wanted a roll call on 20-243 and 20-244, because as a representative of the employees in the city of Trenton for the water department that live here and work here every day, I cannot support this. So that is my statement. Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Are there any other comments?
Yes, Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson. So this is a Trenton-based company, but they will be doing paving and concrete work in other townships. It's not just for the city of Trenton. And I'm not sure that we have enough staffing to cover the county. Thank you.
Well, I will, Council President, it's Robin Vaughn.
Yes.
Well, I would just want to make a correction of the statement that Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson just made. Rustling Paving is not a Trenton-based company. They're in Ewing Township. They're in Ewing.
Mr. Harris, can you continue?
Yes, so you ready for the vote?
Yes.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
No.
Resolution number 20-243 has been approved. Next is resolution number 20-244, which is a resolution accepting a bid and awarding a contract to Diamond Construction in an amount not to exceed $488,475. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? You ready for the vote?
Yes.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
No.
And resolution number 20-244 has been properly approved. Next for your consideration is the consent agenda, which will comprise resolutions number 20-237, 20-238, 20-239, 20-240, 20-221, 20-241, 20-242, and 20-248, 20-252. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Ms. McBride. Is there any discussion? You ready for the vote?
Yes.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
And the consent agenda items have been approved. Next for your consideration is an ordinance being presented for first reading and introduction. It's number ordinance 20-41, authorizing the acquisition of certain real property located at 38 through 48 Fowler Street, block 4002, lot 3.01, commonly known as the Carver Center, pursuant to NJSA 48:12-3 at the purchase price of $250,000. Is there a motion to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Councilwoman Caldwell Wilson, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Is there any discussion? You ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
And ordinance number 20-41 has been properly approved on first reading. It will require a public hearing and second reading to be held on June the 4th, 2020.
Council President,
Yes.
we're going to 20-245 now, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I make my comment, Council President?
Yes, you can. Before you make your comment, if you would allow me to bring Mr. Sawyer, Director Sawyer, in so he can make his statement that he wanted to make based on the young man, and then we'll move straight into this resolution 20-245. So, Mr. Harris, would you let Mr. Sawyer come in to just make his comment to respond to the testing?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer.
Council President, thank you for the opportunity. Fire Director Derek Sawyer, City of Trenton, New Jersey. First and foremost, I want to say that we do have a plan in place, and that plan is being enacted on a daily basis. So every day we're working to make sure that every single citizen in the City of Trenton get tested. Right now, in the past, we've been restricted by guidance from the state and the health department. Some of that guidance has recently been lifted. So we're going to be moving to test even more people in the City of Trenton. So there's a plan in place. It's been a plan in place since the inception of this disaster, and we continue to operate that plan daily. In reference to champion, everyone on the leadership team here champions every day for more testing and for more testing to be made available. And until those resources are provided to us, we can only test with the resources that we had. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer.
Mr. Sawyer.
Okay, Mr. Harris, we may continue with the resolution of 20-245.
Can you make my statement now, or Council President?
Yes, Mr. Harris.
Okay.
Mr. Harrison.
Okay. All right. Here's my statement. Members of this council have made anti-Semitic, bigoted, and homophobic remarks and have refused to condemn these hateful words. But tonight, my colleagues will take a vote to censor me for standing up for my mother. All I have to say is take your vote. Thank you.
So next for the governing body's consideration is resolution number 20-245, which is a resolution to censure the conduct of Councilman Joseph Harrison. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Vaughn, seconded by Mr. Michelle. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to.
Councilwoman Caldwell Wilson?
Yes, I just want to, before I give my vote on this, I just want to say that I'm going to be voting no on this because this is Mr. Harrison's actually first offense of speaking out. That does not mean that I condone what the mayor and what Mr. Harris and what Ms. Vaughn said. But this is his first incident, and I think you're allowed a chance to change your behavior when you get into heated conversations with other members. Thank you.
Marge is going to vote no.
President McBride?
Is McBride? Yes, go right ahead,
I have a
Councilman.
comment. I thought I was after March.
I didn't hear you, so I would move to Councilman Blakely and then to Councilwoman Vaughn.
I was trying to talk first.
I couldn't really hear who, because it was like muffled. So I was going to let Councilman
No problem.
Blakely.
I'll wait.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you, Council.
Mr. Blakely?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just want to know what Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson made. I think that Mr. Harrison allowed an opportunity to show his contrition, and he has, apologized for the use of his language. And so for those reasons, I'm going to say no. Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, this is my resolution. I raised it because I was the individual who was under verbal attack by both the mayor and Mr. Harrison. And actually, the argument did not involve Mr. Harrison. And Mr. Harrison took it upon himself to inject and gang up on me with the mayor.
You've lost.
Please, Mr. Harrison, let her speak. You had your opportunity.
That wasn't me.
To gang up on me with the mayor. The conversation started in the meeting on May 5th about the COVID-19 status meeting. And we were speaking about COVID. And the mayor came in and wanted to speak about subject matter that was unrelated. He started, and for a good 3.5 minutes, and to the conversation about non-performing or underperforming nonprofit organizations in our city. An advocacy that was so unrelated to that meeting. So he came in with the intention of minimizing me and berating me, which he did. He verbally abused me. He called me a child, an idiot, and this went on for 2.5 minutes. The tape that was published in the Trentonian, Gussie Orr chimed in 18 minutes and 30 seconds, and he went on for 2.5 minutes yelling at me, calling me out of my name. After I responded, within a second, Mr. Harrison chimed in and started doing the same. I will not go through all the insults that were hurled at me, but I will say, I will speak on a couple that were very pointed and very offensive and very threatening and concerning. Mr. Harrison not only called me ugly, but he also told me that in 2 years, he's going to chase me out of my house. I didn't refer, and I will say, I apologize. I am deeply sorry for the offensive language in referring to Mr. Harris's mother and using the language that I used. However, I did not do that. long after Mr. Harrison chimed in with the mayor and told me, when you run for mayor and you lose in 2 years, how much do you want for your house? How much do you want for your house, Robin? Then he went on, long before I referred to his mother in that horrible terms. The next concerning thing that he said to me was not to mention he called me out. Let's go, he said, let's go. I don't fight men. Then he said something that is highly offensive to African Americans or who were raised in Jim Crow South or the Civil Rights Movement in 1960s. He said, you are going to run with the shadows. Remember that, Robin. You are going to run with the shadows. You're a coward, he told me. Now, most Black people know what it means to run with the shadows. Those are references that the Ku Klux Klan speak or have spoken to Black people in the dark of night when they come into their houses and burn crosses on their yard and run them out of their homes in the dark of night during those most vicious times in our history. So these are the things that Mr. Harrison said to me as he ganged up on me with another male who happens to be a mayor of our city. So this is why I believe that Joe Harrison should be censored and held accountable. Now, do I accept his apology? He never rendered one to me. I've never seen a written apology circulated in the public about his comments. I never heard once Mr. Harrison taking accountability for his comments. What he has just said is I deserved everything that he said to me because I said something about his mother. But not once did he acknowledge any of the hateful language that he espoused. So for that, and I don't know if my council members have taken the time to listen to the tape and even heard the hateful things that Mr. Harrison said to me. But I would suggest and I recommend, if there is some concern, I would ask that you listen to the tape. It's a horrible audio to listen to. And I'm ashamed of my behavior. And I just want to say, I apologize to everyone. And I am deeply and specifically sorry for the language and my behavior that has offended so many people who support me here in Trenton and beyond, who invested their time and energy so I can be in this place to serve this community. And for that, I am deeply sorry. And again, I ask that you all hear my apology. And it was no excuse for me to behave that way and to speak that language. Because most people in this town, in this city, know my family, know my parents, my father, my mother, my grandparents on both sides, maternal and paternal. And they all know that that's not how AC and Elaine Vaughn raised their children. So for that, I am very sorry. But however, I remain completely focused on the task of turning the city forward. And I just hope everyone shares that goal with me and we can move forward. But as for my fellow councilman, Joseph Harrison, I haven't heard any remorse from him about his hateful comments. And I just hope that my council members consider that accordingly. And that's just for the record. Councilwoman Marge Caldwell-Wilson, she mentioned that this is Mr. Harrison's first time. But it's not. Mr. Harrison has been, across the board, many of us on this council has been out of line. No, you guys weren't caught on tape. And it was not circulated around the world. But every one of you, it was not Mr. Harrison's first time. And for that, Marge Caldwell-Wilson, to tell the truth. How can we move forward if we do not walk in the truth? How can we move forward if the laws and rules are applied to others and not equally applied to another? So you act in fairness, Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson, when you say Joseph Harris is his first time behaving the way he has behaved. And I know there's people in the public who have seen him behave badly and poorly in council meetings. So everyone knows who have seen him behave badly know that you are being disingenuous, Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson. So I would just ask all my fellow councilmen and women, Councilman Blakely, Councilman Rodriguez, Councilman Michelle, Council President McBride, and Councilman Rodriguez. To be fair in your assessment, not only to Joseph Harrison, but to me as well. Because I own my behavior. I stand in front of you and you can judge me as you see fit. But I'm telling you that I apologize to what I said about Mrs. Harrison, Joseph's mother. I apologize to what I said about Reed Gussior. And I apologize for the bad language that I know that my parents not raised me to use. And I mainly also, as I will say again, I apologize to all my constituents, all my sponsors, all my mentors, all my colleagues who've heard that tape here and abroad. Because I worked in Europe. I worked in Asia. I worked in London. So I apologize to everyone. So, and hopefully we can move on from here. So I will yield to any other councilwoman, councilperson who would like to make comments on this censor.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to vote no on censoring Councilman Harrison, and I'm going to vote no in censoring Councilman Bond. I happen to be listening to the conversation. It started as a conversation, and a third person, Mayor Gusiora, started the problem. He started calling names, so I don't believe that it's fair to censure our colleagues, when the person that started the confrontation is not being censored. I will vote no to both of them. But I was listening to the conversation. Ms. Bond had a valid point that was not answered. Instead of an answer, she got repeatedly attacked. You know, I am not condoning the language that was used by the three of them at all. The language was, I think the three of them were wrong. But I'm not in here to censor anybody. We have had a couple of occasions that we have had a executive session to censor people, and we have not done it. I have talked against it because I don't believe that we should be censoring anybody in council. So that I am going to vote no to both of them. Thank you.
I would just like to go on the record and say this, that first, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And for someone to take an opportunity to record a meeting and put it out with this, I got you, who did you get? This affects the entire city. It affects us all. Just like the comment that I made when I was in executive session. When they put it out, it was an executive session meeting, and I should not have used those words. But that it also should not have been leaked because there's supposed to be legal ramifications to even get that type of information out. So I have to concur with my councilman, Mr. Santiago Rodriguez, when he said, why would we censure the two colleagues for their inappropriate language, but the mayor doesn't get any censoring? And so, to me, all of us, each and every one of us have a responsibility to do better, and each one of us should take this as a learning curve, because I understand how this has affected us in the city. When I look at everything that's on the front page of the newspaper, but nothing is about the numbers. We're losing so many people today in nursing homes, and whole families are being infected. And now that's on the back burner to talk about a conversation that went way out of line when we should be talking about how to help our residents, how to help our constituents, how to help our families. This is what is important, not this conversation that has been on the headlines. It's a big distraction from people literally dying. And I take no pride in what we did here on this council and what we have allowed, but we have to do better because we're still in this pandemic, and we must come out of this with as many and save as many lives as we possibly can. So I don't want to spend another day with this conversation and with all the other things that's going on that distracts me or any of my other colleagues from this pandemic. That is the monster out there. Councilwoman Vaughn has apologized. The mayor has apologized. I want this body to look at themselves and say, we have to do better. We must do better. We have to save lives. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And with that being said, I concur with Councilman Rodriguez, and I will not vote for either one of these censures. I want this city to move forward, and I want us to put our best foot forward to save our children's lives and the lives of all of our constituents, because that is what is at stake here now, not this circus and this sideshow. And I don't care about how the media want to distract. We better start looking at our numbers in this 5 square miles and recognize they are higher than any other municipality in the county. We're 5 square miles people, and we have some of the highest numbers. And I won't say the highest, but some of the highest numbers in the county. We better do our job. And this is not part of what I signed on for. And with that being said, Mr. Harris, I'm going to ask you if you would go ahead and take this to a vote.
Mr. Blakely?
No.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson? Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
No.
Mr. Harrison?
I have a comment to make. First and foremost, I have made an apology on May the 3rd. I never said, let's go, going to run with the shadows. I'm not even sure what that means because I never said it. I never called somebody a coward. If anybody listening to the transcript, if you listen to that transcript, you're going to have the councilwoman who's actually calling the mayor a pedophile, and she's talking about little boys going into his house. She makes offensive comments about my mom, calling my mom a whore. So how is it that you're going to talk about now you want to apologize to my mom, but you didn't then, back then when you said it the next day? So I'm not the council person that's had to run in an argument with every council member and almost every director. I'm respectful of anybody knows of every director, and I try to be respectful to all my colleagues. So I'm not sure when I've had all these run-in with people, but it's good to make up a transcript. But if anybody's listened to that tape, I stepped in when the mayor was getting attacked, being called a pedophile and little boys coming out of his house. And I kept saying, can please somebody step in and stop this? And that's what Marge Caldwell-Wilson, the vice chair, was trying to do, was trying to stop it. And she was told to stay out of this because under the recommendations of Councilman Harrison, Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, you're going to get involved in this. So at the end of the day, how is it anybody in this city is going to know me? Like I said, I've never had these interactions with any of these directors or the public. So please, before you start saying those things, maybe you should be telling the truth. Listen to that transcript. I never said those comments. That's not true. They are not true at all. Exactly. That's why I objected to Mrs. Vaughn's transcript, which I still don't even have. And there's not a shed of truth of what she said. So at the end of the day, all these directors and anybody in the city who deals with me knows I'm never come at people like that. Thank you. My answer is no.
Mr. Michelle?
No.
Mr. Rodriguez?
No.
Ms. Vaughn? Ms. Vaughn?
No.
No.
The answer is no.
Ms. McBride?
No.
Resolution number 20-245 has failed. So next on the agenda are public comments. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and begin to unmute everyone. I'm going to ask that everyone please, if you do not intend to speak to the body, to go ahead and remute yourself and try to keep as much background noise as possible to a minimum. There are 100 persons on this line, and if everyone is not respectful, it will become very loud and unruly. And if there is excess in the background noise, I will once again remute you. So I'm going to begin. Ms. Frisbee, you are first. You may go ahead and begin your comments. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. My name is Custer Frisbee, 10 Belmont Circle, Trenton, New Jersey, and I am in the West Ward of the city. Civic Association, and it's the Catawba Heights is a vibrant neighborhood with a civil association that is deeply engaged and invested in our community. We care about Trenton, and we care about civic engagement. We vote and we respect and support our elected officials and the hard work that they do to lift up our city and build a future. When we elected our officials, we expect them to conduct themselves with professionalism, civility, and respect in their public discourse and deliberation as they work to serve our city. They do not have to agree. Dissent and debate is what makes a democracy work. But we expect those we elect to maintain a sense of the gravity of the position they hold. We appreciate fierceness and passion. The city deserves and needs those qualities in its elected officials. But at the same time, we expect thoughtful leadership, especially during this time of crisis, like a global pandemic. As longtime residents of Trenton, some of us have lived here over 30 years. We've witnessed bad behavior in all around recently, and that includes council members Harrison and Vaughn and Mayor Garciora. Frustrations may be very high, but we expect you all to manage difficult conversations with civility. The phone calls heard around the world about the city's response to the pandemic in May was but one particularly erroneous example of unacceptable behavior from all of us. We draw the line, though, at hate speech, which has no place in our conference call nor the city council meetings. The residents of the West Ward and the city of Trenton elected Robin Vaughn to represent us on the city council, and she has on this occasion and a number of others not just deeply embarrassed us, but has uttered words that do real harm. Councilwoman Vaughn's homophobic hate and vulgarity-filled speech and the volley of insults that traded back and forth among adults elected and entrusted with our safety and security is not acceptable. Apologies begin to ring hollow when repeated time after time, with no change in behavior. This is a contentious pattern of conduct for our council representative. We say enough. We have officially had enough of such behavior. Return this moment in the words of former President Barack Obama, who in his address to the 2020 high school graduates of our nation this past Saturday called for doing what you think is right. He said further, build a community. No one does big things by themselves. But if we're going to get through these difficult times, then we're going to have to do it together. So be alive to one another's struggles. Stand up for one another's rights. Leave behind all of the old ways of thinking that divide us. Sexism, racial prejudice, status, greed, and set the world on a different path. The Catawba Heights Civic Association believes that all residents of Trenton deserve city leadership that builds community and stands for responsibility, fairness, and respect for others. We believe that we are stronger together, and when divided, we fall. We are behind our elected officials. However, we ask you to speak thoughtfully because what you say should build something, not tear down people. If you cannot do the right thing by your West Ward constituents, Councilwoman Vaughn, you should step down. We demand better. And this is respectfully submitted by the Catawba Heights Civic Association, Trenton, New Jersey. Thank you for your time.
We just,
Else that wishes to address the governing body at this time?
Yes,
My name
Mr.
is-
Harris.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Paulette Dowling. I live on Clegg Avenue in Trenton, New Jersey. I'm calling in reference to the resolution 20-218. You can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. My thing about that is that I had a problem which I talked to about on a Tuesday meeting about New Jersey Community Capital, how ETC is underneath of that nonprofit and where they're getting all these proposals and grants in the community. When we have meetings, we know nothing about it.
And as soon as I raised my hand up to question this, then like the lady was just saying about Robin Vaughn, that the way she talks. But when you raise your hand up for things that's right, excuse me, the language that she used, I didn't hear it. But when I raised my hand up for meetings about, we want to know about the money, what you're doing with it, how much money did you get for this and that, then I'm a bad person when I go to the meeting. I'm out of order because I question where I live at, because I don't see anything that you are doing with this money. And like I said, New Jersey Community Capital gave the $985,000 2019 proposal. They got $720,000 2020 proposal, and the doors have been shut ever since the virus, and they're doing nothing for us. But that not $720,000 was for the residents, for East Trenton, for the neighborhood, and they shut their doors. And another thing that was said about the mayor, how you can vote on something for the mayor and then he can turn around the next day and change it. I know that because I gave him a copy of the 2019 proposal that we got for ETC, New Jersey Community Capital. It was $985,000. And I asked him, I gave it to him. He said he received it and haven't heard anything, no more about it at all. And this is where that is not right, that you give it to the mayor and you think he's going to do something about it, and he does nothing. This 2020, and Department of Community Affairs, get him another $720,000. Where's it at? What's going on? Why are these people getting all this money, and you come out here, East Trenton, we live at, and we look like the dumps, look like the hood. Abandoned houses. You live in a house that needs this done and that done, and they don't even do it. You get in a pool or a group of people, then it's like me that sit there and read your application, determine whether it's legitimate or not. But this is what's happening here, right here where I live at. Yes, I'm coming to the City Hall. Where else can I go at but the City Hall? Help me. Help us out here. That's all I'm asking for you to do. Look into it. Stop it. They're from New Brunswick. Let them go where they come from. And let the City Hall take care of us like they're supposed to, because we pay our taxes. Thank you.
Ms. Fair?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Harris. This is Caitlin Fair, 215 South Clinton Avenue. I just wanted to state that I am confused by the claims that are being made that we need to focus on addressing the pandemic when we are throwing up roadblocks to getting necessary funding through to actually address it. Robin and Councilwoman McBride, I'd like to remind you that the mayor is also an elected official who was voted into office by the Greater Trenton constituency, and I, for one, trust him to make the appropriate and fair allocations with the money being disseminated. As Mr. Ward pointed out earlier, we need to act quickly and decisively in order to address the pandemic, and demanding that the duly elected mayor jump through hoops to get necessary allocations approved by council when people are in dire need of services is irresponsible and narcissistic. We cannot wait on this. You seem to have a personal vendetta against the mayor and other member of council for some reason, but at this point it is completely impacting your ability to be fair and judicious in doing your own job and working in the best interests of the people of this city. By continuing to hold up funding over a matter of semantics and power tripping, you are putting us all at risk. And additionally, I would like to point out that based on the last numbers that I've seen, per capita, we have one of the lowest rates of infection of the local municipalities, thanks to what I believe is the mayor's swift and decisive efforts. I would also like to say that, Robin, I think it's quite absurd to assert that you were ganged up on, given the tirade that you were on when Mr. Harrison chose to interject, and given your history of bullying people indiscriminately throughout your tenure. Yes, it is inappropriate to call someone an idiot, but offering to buy someone's house is a far cry from the character assassination that you engaged in on that call. I have taught U.S. history for many years with a heavy focus on the Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras, and I certainly don't know everything, but I have never heard or seen the comments you referred to in your earlier statement tied to the KKK or Jim Crow. I believe that you're making absolute false equivalencies to try to make yourself look better in the eye of the public and evade responsibility for your role in what was done. Furthermore, claiming that someone deserves certain treatment or justifying your own actions by pointing out that someone else started it is juvenile and is the antithesis of accountability. You have a responsibility to control your own behavior, regardless of how someone else conducts themselves. And you have proven time and again that you simply refuse to do so. As I mentioned in my previous comment at the last Thursday meeting, your apology is absolutely useless. It rings hollow as you continue to demonstrate the same behavior over and over. None of your actions indicate that you are trying to move forward as you continuously keep purporting. You keep saying these things over and over, but your actions indicate quite the opposite. That's my comment. Thank you, Mr. Harris. And I'm sorry to see you go. I wish that you could stay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yes.
Take your name and address for the record.
Yes. Oh?
Yes.
Muting me. Oh, stop muting.
I did not mute you. Who is this?
Sherry Garrett.
Go ahead. You're muting yourself.
Okay.
Go ahead and take your name and address for the record.
Okay. Sherry Garrett, 1 Bruce Park Drive. Enough is enough. I'm on this chat. This is chat, and enough with the bickering and the back and forth with the accusations. Enough is enough. I've had enough of it. And this is one of the reasons that deters people from participating in this process. You know, the accusations and how you feel, keep your emotions out of it. And we keep coming back to the same mindset that we can spew out our opinions and how we feel at the expense of everybody. Enough is enough. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I would like to address the council.
State your name and address for the record.
My name is Algernon Ward. My address is 688 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard here in Trenton.
Go ahead, Mr. Ward.
I had referred to a COVID-19 testing plan for Trenton. And Director Sawyer said that there was a plan in place. Unfortunately, the plan that he's referring to does not include public health elements that would be required to do a citywide testing plan. And those elements would be a full epidemiological novel SARS-CoV-2 study for all Trenton residents, a description of the COVID-19 testing priorities and how they will be addressed, a COVID-19 monitoring program for essential workers, a school disinfection program with health screens for all students and staff, a proposed schedule to implement that plan here in Trenton, ongoing health surveillance for all Trentonians, a vaccination program when it becomes available, and asymptomatic detection and contact tracing for Trenton. Now, if there's a plan that does that, I would love to see it, because I've been talking about it for the past month. We do have an emergency response plan, but it is not specific for COVID-19, and it does not include the 8 elements I just counted off. But if I'm wrong about that, nobody would be happier. But it was any plan that's not shared with the public or accessible to the public is no good. It's fine for the people to discuss it on conference calls, but if it's not getting to the public, it's just not doing us any good. And if a plan exists, I'd like to know, when is Kingsbury going to be tested? When is Trent Towers going to be? When's the Luther Arms? That's the kind of plan I'm talking about. When they're going to come to the boulevard. This is what I want to know. And people need to know this before they can go back to work, so they know what their COVID-19 testing status is. And I ain't about to send my 3-year-old grandson to daycare unless I know that building's been disinfected and that the staff is tested negative and the other students have. So this is no joke. If we want to open up this society and return to normalcy, people have to have the confidence that they're not putting their lives in jeopardy by undergoing what would be normal tasks under any other circumstances. So I just would that people would not get defensive when I call for this, because I'm only speaking on my behalf on my health, and I'm sure most of the people in Trenton, when we say we need to know what the health testing plan is and how it's going to be implemented and what are the priorities to get that done. So I'm willing to work with anybody. Now, I don't have an agenda other than making sure that people's health is protected. So I welcome to see that plan in place. In fact, we had a Zoom call with health professionals and clergymen last Wednesday. I hope we plan to have one this Wednesday coming, and they had said that they were going to kind of update where they were, and I'm hoping to hear that something's been put down in writing so that the public can see it and understand it and implement it. But I can tell you right now, the people at Trent Towers are frantic trying to get tested, and no one can tell them when that's going to happen. Simply offering a test doesn't do it. You have to go to where the problem is. Thank you for your indulgence, council members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Is there anyone else that would like to?
Senator Clark? Yes, Evangeline, I would like to speak.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Evangeline Gordon, Southward resident of Other Street. I want to opportunity to Trenton residents.
You have a lot of noise going on in your background, Angela. You have a lot of noise going on there. Could you calm some of that noise down?
Yes, I can if I could. I appears to be a reception problem, Council President. I'm one of the first responders, and I try to squeeze out time at my the governance of my city is very important. I do static. It's not in my control. If I can to speak as best as I can to get the point out that I wanted to make, I just wanted to say that with every situation that happens in life or for every incident, there's always two sides to a story, if not more. Regarding the rest 2245, 2247, just want to thank the council governing body for the sense of moving forward that you have adopted. It is moved, I think, to move in that direction. All the sentiments that have been aired, people are allowed. A dialogue is always good. It's always welcome. That's what the political process is about. In fact, that's what life is about. It's not a one-way road. So everybody is entitled to their opinion. I just want to thank everybody for exercising a sense of maturity and unity towards moving forward. Regarding the resolution 2218, I just like to echo support what others prior to me have said, to include that it's not just with the COVID-19 funds and the process of allocating those. In that, there are other issues vis-a-vis those that concern the continuity of residents for senior citizens in this year's city of Trenton regarding the maintenance of their homes, so that they can encouraged, to stay and helping to pay the tax into the pool of the tax monies and which squandered. A lot of them are on the list for several years and nothing has been done. And so I'm not surprised as to how this is going with the COVID-19. I applaud everybody who has spoken about this. I think that merits proper investigation. Say that a clear conscience. No, I can. Regarding what affects them.
Okay? Yes, Angeline, you're not coming through at all. As a matter of fact, we haven't been able to understand most of what you said, and I apologize if this is on our end, but the system is not working for you. You're not coming through.
As her connection is not clear, I don't know if she's on a cell phone, but she's breaking in.
Council President, is this better?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I'm trying to, as I mentioned, I don't know if you caught that, and for the listening public, I'm one of the first responders, and I try to take time at my own expense to participate in the civil proceedings regarding the governance of my beloved city of Trenton. So the problem is relative to the area and the reception in the area where I am. So I do apologize once again, but I was commending the totality of the council for their maturity in the deliberations that have been going on regarding moving forward and not censoring anybody, because there is, two sides to any story, if not more than that. Regarding Resolution 20218, I was supportive of what others have said prior to myself, and saying that beyond the consideration of the funds for the COVID-19, there are other long-standing problems that have yet to be resolved, and so it merits questions in the ways that people have aired, and they are all allowed. Again, I say, if you have a clear conscience, you have nothing to fear. So live and let live. That is the way of life. Nobody is above due process, and people should answer questions and not get irritated when questions of accountability and transparency are asked. Nobody is going to bamboozle anybody out of any office because they are stirring the pot that have previously not been stirred in the ways that they are being stirred now. It is never nice to gang up on anybody, male or female, and so please, enough of all of that. I want to applaud all the department directors who are doing their absolute best, to help move the city forward. Thank you all. May God bless and keep all of us safe.
Does anyone else address the governing body at this time? Yes. Please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Ingram. Thank you, Mr. Ingram. I appreciate your comments.
May I address?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. This is Dan Fatton, 120 Jackson Street. Thanks for taking public comments. I want to say a few things. One is, thank you to Algernon Ward for his comments about the importance of testing and I think he put forward some really good ideas here about the importance of not only testing, but contact tracing. And I hope those on council and the administrative staff, the directors, really take to heart what he's recommending here. Yes, the city has an emergency response plan, but if the public can't access the plan and doesn't know what's in the plan, it's really not that helpful. So I think in the past, when the public has tried to read the plan or understand what's in the plan, those requests have been denied, which is questionably illegal. But Mr. Ward has really good comments on this, and I just want to encourage folks to listen to what he's saying here. It's not enough just to test once. I saw in the chat people are saying, well, you could be negative and then it'll come positive, and that's true. That's why we need repeated tests. You need regular testing on a regular basis. And granted, some of this is above your pay grade, okay? Like, we need the federal government to provide funding so that this is accessible testing on a regular basis. But I hope that from what I'm hearing council say about wanting to move forward and wanting to address the crisis at hand, I hope you really take that to heart and mean it. Like, let's actually get a comprehensive testing system up and running in the city and make sure that people understand where to go and how to get it done. Mr. Ward had really good ideas that I hope you will listen to. And I think, I'm deeply offended by the call and particularly by the comments of Councilwoman Vaughn, as I made very clear in my op-ed in the Trenton Times. But I think more to the point, I also agree with what people are saying about needing to focus here. and wanting to rise to the moment. Let's actually focus on doing something good for the people who live in this city rather than continuing the bickering. And so, other communities are thinking about how to help small businesses. They're thinking about opening up streets so people have an easier way to exercise, to bike and walk. They're thinking about, how to provide food for people who are hungry. And I just want to encourage council to actually rise to the occasion here. There's a lot of work to be done. There was work to be done before this disaster. And now more than ever, we need you to, focus on what's important. So thank you for allowing me to speak. And thank you for hopefully moving beyond where we've been, because we need it.
Thank you, Mr. Fatton. Is there anyone else that would like to address the governing body at this time?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lydia Thornton, 1219 West State Street. First thing I'd like to say is to kind of echo what Mr. Fatton just said, to thank Algernon Ward, because what he laid out right there was what the city needs.
Ms. Thornton, is that the noise coming from you?
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. I'm in a totally silent room.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, what Mr. Ward said is really what we need to do. We've had these 4, secret squirrel testing locations in different wards on different days, and it was all very secret, unnecessarily so. And even they were acknowledging that not all their tests were being used, but nobody thought ahead to say, well, let's go to Luther Towers, let's go to Kingsbury, and use the rest of our allocation for this week in one of these spots where people can't get out to us. But people don't think like that, I guess. They just want to sit and wait. And it's a sad statement on who's prioritized in our city. And I see that a lot. Kathy, I have to also salute you for continuously standing up for the children. And that is not mine, I promise you. Our babies, we don't know what's happening to them. We don't have them in schools. We don't have them in daycare. Nobody is seeing some of these kids for now 2 months.
Yes.
And hopefully they're being fed. Hopefully they're safe. Hopefully they can go back to school in September. The city as a whole has a certain responsibility overseeing the Board of Education, who has a whole ton of money, to make sure that all our kids are safe. There's a responsibility there. And I have to say, Kathy, you continuously point to that, and I thank you for that, seriously. Mr. Harris, thank you for your service to us. The only other thing I wanted to touch on was something that was read in as a first ordinance tonight, or a first reading, I'm sorry, and that's the purchase of the Carver Center. Because I'm very curious on 2 things that I would like council to think about between now and the 4th of June. One, what is the city's plan for that piece of property and building? It's a historic landmark. There's a lot of people in this city who have a lot of history and memories and, life experience tied up in that building. It's very, very important. We're putting forth to buy it for $250,000 because we had a, right of first refusal from 20 plus years ago. Is that the best use, or could whoever was going to buy it do it better? Do we have $250,000 to spend, and then whatever money it's going to take to really treat it the way it should be treated, to honor it the way we have failed to honor so many buildings and houses and everything else in our city? We're one of the historic cities on the East Coast, and we have more boarded up buildings and old houses than anybody can shake a stick at, and we just shrug and say, oh, well. it'll change someday. Yeah, it'll change when money says it'll change. But you as a council body in this time, besides the pandemic issue, have a historic issue to look at in your responsibility to saving what pieces of the history of our city you can. Look at it seriously from a financial standpoint. We are in a pandemic. Do we have $250,000 extra in a budget that's not even submitted for next year anyway? I'll leave that there. Or would that money be better spent on the kids, on education, on programs for our teenagers so they don't end up in these streets the way they are, and let whoever else is interested in it actually develop it as a historical spot and a draw for the city? Heck, we haven't finished fixing the Battle Monument in how many years? It still has boarded doors on it. So just really consider that when you're looking at that piece of legislation. Are we the best owner and caretaker of that piece of property? Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. Ayana, you're up next.
Hi.
Go ahead, state your name and address for the record.
I am currently a Newark resident, but I lived for several years around the corner from the Carver Center, and I would like to speak to that last point that was raised. I actually want to commend the city for stepping in. A lot of us, not just folks that have memories from the historic aspects of the Carver Center, but folks that have more recent memories of good times at the Carver Center as a living asset for the community. A lot of us were very, very concerned when, unfortunately, due to a lack of resources, the Carver Center had to close. And a lot of us were very, very worried when we heard that it was up for sale. I just want to commend the city for reducing the risk to this amazing historic asset, which it would face if it were on the open market, as it was. For a lot of us have seen other historic assets like, different, but similarly, the YWCA building, for example, on Hanover Street, where again, it was the organization running it closed the facility and sold it to an investor who had no plan, who was not able to reactivate it. The building deteriorated. And while I understand that it's going to be, it may be challenging to pull together the resources that it needs to be reactivated as a real community asset that honors the history. I think it is much more dangerous for it to be purchased by an investor without that may not have the real resources for that. I also want to note that the city, several of the cultural assets within the city are city owned, and I really commend the City Council for moving forward with this and the administration for moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the governing body at this time? Is there a motion to close the public comments?
So moved.
Moved by seconded by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson. Mr. Blakely? Mr. Blakely? Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fawn?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
And the public comment portion is closed. Next on the agenda is scheduled civic comments and then an executive session. So you want to open up for civic comments?
Do you guys want to open up for civic comment or move straight to the executive session?
I say move to executive session.
I'd like to say my comments now.
I would rather do civic comments.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of what we should be doing. Okay, so we'll move straight to civic comment, and Mr. Blakely, you expressed your opinion about moving to comments, and we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you so much, President McBride. A few things I'd like to discuss. Number one, I'd really like to publicly thank Mr. Harris for his service to the city of Trenton and to Trenton City Council. You have been a mentor and a guide for my time on this council. Your wisdom, your balance is going to be missed in the city of Trenton. And I am saddened that you're moving on. I'm happy that you are going to be moving on with your profession and making more money. But I think that your loss was, quite frankly, a failure of this council to retain skills that you brought to us. And so we're going to miss you. I'm going to miss you. I hope to keep in touch with you. And, I think that Berlin is very lucky to have you. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Number two, I think that there needs to be a focus on violence that is occurring in the city. I think it is really important to have the police director roll out a plan to address the recent uptick in violence. We have had a number of murders over the last week. It hasn't even gotten hot yet. The summer is not even here. And we are seeing acts of violence that are depraved and are disturbing to many of the good people, to all of the good people in the city of Trenton. And so we really need to see a plan from the administration. We have a pandemic, a public health pandemic in the midst of our violence epidemic in the city of Trenton. And there needs to be real plan from the administration on how they are going to address this issue. Thirdly, I'd like to mention the fact that I want to thank my colleagues for supporting the ATV ordinance. It passed unanimously, and I really want to thank my colleagues for voting for this. I know last year it was not passed, but this year it was passed, and so I'm very pleased that the police officers have more tools in their toolbox to address this issue. And so I want everyone to be safe. We're in troubling times. We are coming up on the 2-year anniversary of our tenure on this council, and I'm just praying and hoping that the next 2 years go better than the last 2 years. And so what's done is done. What's said is said. I've been very clear about how I felt about the comments of my colleagues, but we have a city to run. We have a city to grow, to enhance, and quite frankly, we need to focus on that. So again, I want to just say finally, I want to thank all of the first responders for all of their work. I want to thank folks in City Hall that are working under very trying conditions in the midst of this pandemic. And I just want to say thank you very much. And everyone enjoy your week, and we'll talk soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Harrison, Councilman Harrison. Councilman Harrison.
Yes.
You're skipping me?
No, I apologize. In my mind, I'm thinking cat. So I apologize, Councilwoman.
Yeah, my cats are quiet right now, so I can speak. Well, first of all, I want to thank my colleagues tonight for dealing with this issue in the way they have. And I would hope that that's going to be a reflection of the future when we do business at council, I would just ask Ms. Vaughn not to get so hot under the collar whenever I say anything, because I do have the right to my opinion as well as anybody else. I want to thank the first responders. I want to thank all of the firemen, the policemen, the EMTs. I want to thank the staff and the health team, and I want to thank the public workers who are out there every day, because I love what they're doing with our roads, and they don't get enough kudos for what they do. Our garbage men have been out every single day since this COVID virus started, and nobody seems to care, and we do care. We do care about their health, and we do care about their welfare. So I want to thank them, and I want to thank Mr. Harris. It's been a rough couple of years, Mr. Harris. I know it has been, but I know that you've enjoyed everything. Hello?
You're still on,
Okay.
Councilwoman.
So I know you've enjoyed every minute of it, Mr. Harris. I can't say I have, but you will be missed. But I wish you well in your new job, and I'm happy that you're going to be making more money than you did in the city of Trenton. And I know this is a step up for you. So go with all our love. And that's all I have to say for tonight. And I want to thank everybody who is participating on this call, because it's very, very important that you're a part of this dialogue. I would like to think that when we go back to City Hall, that you will show up at the meetings also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Councilman Harrison, Councilman Harrison, I want to skip over you and go straight to Michelle like I did Councilwoman Caldwell-Wilson. Councilman Harrison?
First, I would like to thank Mr. Harris for his service. Mr. Harris has been unbelievable working with. He's worked with all the colleagues. He's been a blessing to the city. I mean, he truly is going to be missed. And anytime any of us had any questions or issues, Mr. Harris was always there to step up and help lead us into a more clear direction. So I'd like to thank Mr. Harris. I thank you so much. Appreciate that. Secondly, the hiring and the approval of Mr. Berry was done illegally. Additionally, the city of Trenton is not allowed to hire unqualified people to fill vacancies of the city clerk. We have a qualified applicant, and they are the one that must be the one chosen. There was a decision in case Gloucester City Welfare Board versus State City Service Commission 93 NJ 384, 395 in 1938. In 1983. Also, it's truly sad that this council has to continue to operate illegally against the very basic rules of good governing, holding illegal trials, appointing positions illegally, and are not doing what the citizens of the Trenton deserve. We have businesses that are being forced to close because of the virus pandemic. Many of these businesses will not survive much longer, if at all. This city has already lost too many businesses that provide jobs and pay taxes. We, as the city of Trenton, have not formally any kind of plan to reopen any normal society. Instead, horrible name-calling and slander that occurs at this council. The good people on this council need to step up and do the right thing for the people of Trenton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Councilman Michelle?
Everything was said by the rest of the council. I have nothing more to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Santiago Rodriguez?
Well, everything that my colleague said is very right. I agree very much with Mr. Argemon said. I asked about that at the beginning. I wanted the essential personnel to be tested, but I was told that CDC would not allow that. Because I believe the way we did this testing was the opposite. We should not be waiting until you're almost dead. The doctor has to determine that you need that test. That's why we didn't have too many people tested in the city. It was like a little waste of time and resources for that. We should have tested our residents in these high rises, these senior citizens that can hardly walk. But it was done, so we have to forget about it. Next time, do it better. Hopefully, we get out of this soon, out of this crisis. This is a serious crisis. It's not a game. I know a lot of residents have been taking it as if it was a game, but it's not. It's something serious. Things are coming. Are going to come out of it. A lot of good things for Trenton. A lot of positive things. I have to mention the Carver Center. I believe that's one of the wisest decisions the economic development and the city is doing. I remember about 51 years ago, I used to go to that center to have meetings there. It was an excellent place. It's a historic place. If we let it go, we sell it to somebody else, we let it somebody else buy, they could do whatever they want with it, And at the beginning, probably about August of last year, I introduced a resolution to deal with these issues of the historic buildings, also historic tourism. I hope that the administration and my colleagues in council help me to keep that going, because that's what we need. We need to work that. We have the history in Trenton. We are not exploiting it. We have to sell our history. We have to keep the Carver Center. We have to keep it. We have to keep the Hisbig School. Those are historic buildings. We have to keep them under the city's control. We cannot let the private sector taking over, because they are going to tear them down. They are going to do whatever they feel with them. Last but not least, I have to thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you very much for instructing me through these 2 years. I'm new in this. I didn't know anything about city council, and I enjoy going to you, and you were you taught me a lot. You taught me a lot, and I appreciate that. And if I was younger, I'll go down to Berlin to go down there. But thank you for what you did to me and what you have done for the city, the merchants, everybody. You have been doing a great job there. I didn't know that you were leaving, but you're going to get better money. It's going to be less stressful probably for you. You don't have to deal with us, with our bickering and our fighting probably. Hopefully you go to a better environment. And thank you for the public to be present in this conversation. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vaughn?
Yes, I'm going to hopefully be quick, but I just want everybody to focus on helping the city. And really, when you come to council and you want to hold government officials accountable and the people that you elected to do a job, try to understand, attempt to understand the government and the roles of each individual. You talk about your council, you talk about the directors of the city that runs the individual departments, and you talk about the mayor, and then even the county was even touched upon. You have the freeholder board, you have the county executive. They all play a role in the effective and efficiency run of our government. So we talked about the testing. The testing from its inception for COVID was a debacle that no one has even touched upon. That day one in our city of Trenton, none of our government even thought, not one level of government, County Executive Hughes, the Freeholder Board, the state legislatures, our mayor, decided to put our test center up at Quaker Bridge Mall, where they know that we have a transportation challenged population, that we know that we have senior citizens that live in buildings, that are low income and poor. So when you talk about holding your government accountable, you've got to know what's going on. But you want to stay on drama and personalities. Meanwhile, you say you want to hold government officials accountable, but you don't, because it's selective and it's not in the interest of the people. It's not in the interest of the residents and taxpayers, particularly of Trentonians. So much money that comes through this city, earmarked for social programs, for economic development, for COVID and to help us fight pandemic, never benefits the people. It disappears to organizations that some of you come here and champion and will pass and vote yes for. This is to my colleagues. Will vote yes just because they're your friend, just because you sit on the board, just because whatever, they live in your neighborhood. One of our citizens have come here to this council twice, and she stood here and said she even spoke to the mayor. She's part of the East Trenton Collaborative. She's had a red herring is over there. Red herring. This organization is getting CDBG grant money, taxpayer dollars. Go look at East Trenton. Ask those nonprofits that's supposed to have boots on the ground, getting public funds, and not delivering to the benefit of the people. But I hear nothing about that. It's glossed over. Money, funds that come in for COVID. We sat here and approved $3.5 million across a select population of nonprofit organizations that some been in the city for years and have no proven track record of results or outcomes. Where's the outrage about that? Where's the outrage? Mr. Algernon, we were punching with a plan. But if anybody who has ever held a job in as a project manager, who sits on a planning board, no less, knows that if you have a plan is no good if you don't have the funding, if you don't have the resources, and you have not efficiently allocate those resources against those defined deliverables. So Algernon is saying, I heard him, where's the plan, Mr. Sawyer? And to this council, we got $3.5 million of COVID money, and I can bet you I can go down the line and ask each one of my council members what purpose each individual nonprofit organization who's getting this funding, what are they going to use it for? And none of them can't tell you because they never received a plan, but yet they voted for it. So how are we going to hold accountability? How are we going to move our city forward if people can come in here and get money and we don't have nothing to hold them accountable? We don't even have a plan to measure them on. We giving somebody $250,000. They don't have to submit a plan. They don't have to tell us what they're going to use it for. They don't have to give us a time frame. They don't have to tell us how many people they're going to serve. The mayor doesn't ask for it, then he comes to this council and wants us to say yes, and our council members say yes. We didn't have to pass it today. We could have tabled it until we got that information. Those managers that run those nonprofits, they're citizens too. They pay taxes too. Those are taxpayer dollars. Those are public funds. We all have a responsibility to those funds and to make sure they're utilized. Council President McBride schooled us on Tuesday. She read the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development guidelines to managing and distributing those funds and everybody's role and responsibility to make sure they're used properly and they're getting down to the people and they're funding the right programs and services. And everybody comes here and talk around it and want to pretend that everything is okay. And you want to smoke and mirrors and detract and distract about drama, stuff that don't even matter, stuff that no one's going to remember a year, 2 years from now. But no one, except for Miss Dowling, talked to, and Algernon Ward, really went to the crux of the matter. So ask this council, out of that $3.5 million, out of the organizations we're giving this money to, your taxpayer dollars, to address COVID, because that's what the U.S. government says we're supposed to be using that money for in this city, COVID. How many of those organizations are going to be using it for testing? So when Algernon presents his plan, we didn't even allocate any of that money toward testing. None of it. But yet, we all passed it. So weeks or months from now, when we come around the corner, where's the money coming from so that we can set up a robust test infrastructure for COVID-19 in the city of Trenton? Where's it coming from? Because Director Delisle came to the mic today and told us it ain't going to be no round two. This is it. We're going to start going into business as usual CDBG grant funding, but the COVID allocations coming from the federal government is done. So we've already approved the allocation. So where are we going to get the funding to finance the test plan, the robust test plan that Mr. Ward has put forward? I'm not playing no games with nobody. You come here with some facts, some data, some research. I ain't got no time to be talking about some bull crap when people are dying with and giving money to nonprofits who have not shown or have any proven track record of delivery for nothing in this city. And like Ms. Dowling said and stated, you look around this city, where have all this millions and millions of dollars of CDBG grant money have gone? Where's the quality assurance and oversight in our city? Why do we not have the professionals in place to provide that oversight to these funds? Because obviously our council's not doing it. We just say yes because the mayor calls us up and say you better vote for it, or the party that they belong to calls them up and say they better vote for it because they got their friends on the list. Well, I'm going to say this. I'm a third-generation Trentonian. My maternal and paternal grandparents came to this city from Jim Crow South. I'm not resigning. I pay taxes in the city. I'm going to make sure whatever I could do, whatever work I could do for this city to move forward, I'm going to do it. And ain't nobody going to stop me. I didn't get here sitting in a seat because of a Democratic Party or Democratic committee. I got here, the 2,000 votes for the people who live here in the West Ward. And those are the only people who I answer to. And yeah, there are some select ones who are disappointed, who don't want me to be here. But I can assure you it ain't the majority. So I will keep my seat until 2022 or otherwise that's some recall that's going on. And if those voters come to the poll and say, Robin, time's up, we're not happy with you, that's the democratic process. But it doesn't negate my responsibility to continue to participate and make sure my city is run effectively. But anybody else who does not live in the city of Trenton, who think, I don't care if the governor, I don't care if the lieutenant governor, who think they could tell me to resign, they don't own any of these seats on this council. These seats belong to the residents and the taxpayer of the city of Trenton and the electorate of the city of Trenton. These are the only individuals who decide who gets to sit in these seats. So, but I'm telling everybody, look at the docket when you come to this council. Look at the docket. Look at how much money is on there. Look at your streets. We get funding for everything. Those funds are leaving this city by nonprofit organizations who have not been held accountable. And I guarantee you, after the COVID crisis is gone, the pandemic, they didn't even put up a plan. So how are you going to measure their results? So hopefully, God willing, all would pan out. But we have to check ourselves. We have to hold our own self accountable in this process. We all play a role. So moving forward, let's just put aside the drama. You know, get our clipboard, as Barack Obama would say. Get your clipboard, put on your sneakers, get your pen, and get busy. Because there's work that has to be done. And I don't have to like you, but since we're all Trentonians, we are all on this ship together. So let's get it done, and I'm willing to work with everybody, anybody to do it. Thank you, Council President. Good night. And Mr. Harris, I concur with all the other 6 council members that it was a pleasure to work with you, and you have taught me a lot, and all the best and success to you. And I'm sure the world is short. New Jersey is a small state. We're what, 21 counties? I'm sure, hopefully, if we all stay in government, our paths will cross again. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would just like to say to all of the people that's online that took the time to come on, I thank you all, and I appreciate you. And for all the directors and all the hard work they do, I appreciate them. I would like to say thank you to Mr. Harris and the time that you served here in the city. This has not been an easy task. And I would like to move on, and I would like to thank Mr. Berry for at least submitting his resume to come on board. And I would like for the community at large to know that it is not easy to find a permanent clerk for our office. Mr. Berry is a stopgap. He's there until we find a permanent clerk. I do know that in trying to advertise for this position and residency war zone, that's what it looks like. I want to ask my liaison to the Board of Education, Councilman Rodriguez, if he would make sure that the school board is taking this opportunity to lay out a plan for the fall. We need to see what it's going to look like going back to school for our children. We need to know what measures they have taken, because life as we know it has changed. We're about to be in the coming months into a flu season, and plus we are dealing with this COVID-19. So if our liaison could get with the board members over at the Board of Education to find out what their plan looks like for our children, to find out if these children do not go back to school, how their work is going to be given to them, making sure that all of the children, remember, there's 30 children in our classrooms. That is unheard of, as when I was growing up here all of my life, that there would be 30 children to a class. So we need to try to find out what the plan is for the fall for the schools and our children. The third thing is Councilman Santiago asked the administration to use some of the COVID money to help with funeral arrangements for our residents, for the residents in the city of Trenton. I have not heard anything back from the administration about at least assisting some of our family members with if they want to do cremation or graveside service. I haven't heard anything back. And when I look at the COVID-19 guidelines, that they could have given us an answer to that question. I would like to say that I would appreciate it if we can move forward with the pandemic, the help with the pandemic, but also don't forget about the fact that our employees are working without a contract. When this budget is finally passed, I think that the mayor owes it to our city employees to sit down with them and give them a contract. I stated earlier that it is insulting to know that a person working on the back of our sanitation department, which I consider a frontline worker, is taking home $35,000 for a family of 7. It's despicable. You bring aides on. There's aides in the mayor's office that make more than the sanitation workers, that makes more than the water and sewer workers. This is unacceptable by all stretches of the imagination. And I just want to say that it can't be tolerated. They need a contract, and the mayor needs to sit down and make that happen. I would like to speak on the fact that the way that we help our city grow. We help our city grow by how we allocate the funds and to who and to what agency we allocate those funds to. And Councilwoman Vaughn is correct. If you look around the city and you look at the list of people that just was allocated that money, they've been on the list for the last 10 to 15 years or more, but yet and still you can ride by the rescue mission and they have sofas. They're sleeping on the ground during the day for the kind of money that we're shelling out, not just the CARES Act money. I'm talking about the grants that we get and we shell it out. The rescue mission, the health center. This is just unacceptable to have people in the 21st century sleeping on the ground with this kind of money. And I would like to just say that Mayor Fulop up in Jersey City, he's taken this particular opportunity to make things happen in Jersey City. He's getting his road work done. He's getting the senior centers complete, the community centers and the parks. They're making that happen up in Jersey City. They're taking advantage of the fact that the people aren't in the centers, the people aren't out during the evening, and they are making things happen. Look at our city. For crying out loud, we must do better. We must do better. There is no reason that this city of only 5 square land miles look the way it does. And I don't know what happened to the 100 homes, 100 days or 1,000 homes, I don't even know what happened to that. But we have families, working class families that work in the city hall that can't even afford to purchase a home as a first-time homeowner, first-time buyer, because they're making $35,000. This is not the way a city turns itself around. It's just not the way that it happens. And as long as you have that level of poverty in this city, you're not going to attract people here. And that's just the way that it is. And I would just like to say before we go, I want to tell you all a brief story that I just feel as though the community should know. Yesterday, a group of children came in front of my home and they snatched a bike from my children. My children runs in the house and says, "Mom, they just came up and they took the bike." I go outside and I said it was a group of about 8 children. And I go outside and I said, "You need to bring that bike back." I said, because I'm quite sure that if I took you home to your mother, she would not know that you were out here with this type of activity. So they went on, saying what they say, because it's a group of them doing what they do. So it was an older child with them. And she came over to the porch and said, "Send your little boy down so he could fight the..." I said, "What is going on?" So my son-in-law, I called him, and he said, "Mom," he said, you can't say anything to these children because all of their parents are gang members. You need to call the police." So I called the police to find out that the children, 14 of our children from the age of 10 to 17, is living in an abandoned property on Laurel Avenue, that they go there every night without lights, running water, or any type of electricity. Our children in the city of Trenton, it's almost as if I was watching the Tales of Two Cities. I am telling you guys that I don't care what you think of me as an individual, but my job is to try to change the quality of life for our residents. And I'm telling you, I got sick yesterday. I started to cry because there were a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, 14, and God knows the other ages. This can't happen in the city of Trenton, the capital. It shouldn't happen anywhere, but to happen in my backyard, to happen in your backyard. These are the things that must be addressed in our city. We cannot move forward unless we go to the root of the problem. And to me, the root of the problem is our children, because those are the ones that we're supposed to be working hard for. Those are the ones that we're supposed to be protecting. And if we can't do that, we're failing our children and we're failing their future. So I would ask each and every one of you out there on this line to take a hard look at yourself, and instead of pointing a finger at me, point that finger back to yourself and ask, what can I do to help change this situation? And I know that that's a lot to process in a short time, but we have to do something. And I thank each and every one of you for coming. We're going to go into executive session because Councilwoman Vaughn wants her hearing in executive session, unless she waives that right, and we can do it here. But right now she wants to go in executive session, and we will have to take a vote for executive session.
Let me explain this process on how this is going to work. We're going to close this meeting. The members who are going to be participating in the executive session will dial back in. That meeting will then be locked, and those persons who dial in thinking they can sneak in the back door will be put out of the meeting, and the executive session will occur. After which the governing body is going to have to resume in public session again, because the discussion can take place in executive session, but the actual resolution, if it is to be voted on, has to be done in the public session. We will need to have a definitive time as to when the public session is going to be resumed, so everyone who wishes to come back into the public session knows what time to be here. So, Council President, it is now, according to my clock, 8:21 p.m. So how much time are you going to permit for this executive session so we can give the public a definitive time at which they may join back into the public portion?
Well, the one thing that I do not want to do, Mr. Harris, is to be cut off. So we only have 5 hours on this call, and we've used, we used 3 hours already?
So let me clarify. Once this session is ended, then that clock restarts.
Okay, great. Okay, so I believe that we should be able to spend, it's 8:21. I think that we should be able to spend 30 minutes to 45 minutes in that executive session. And so I would like to say that at 9 o'clock we'll be back no later than, if we're not, give it to 9:10, and we will definitely be back on the regular meeting schedule.
So it's got to be one or the other, 9 o'clock or 9:10.
I think 9 o'clock is good enough. I really do.
So then the open portion will reconvene sharply at 9 o'clock p.m. If anyone wishes to participate in the public portion, then you can dial back in at 9 o'clock p.m. Are there any questions from the governing body members? So I will proceed to read with the resolution to enter into executive session, resolution number 2-246, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Trenton. This body will convene an executive session in the private conference, not room, but whatever, that will be limited to consideration of an item or items with respect to which the public may be excluded pursuant to Section 7B of the Open Public Meetings General Meeting. Subject or subjects to be discussed are personnel, city council, stated as precisely as presently as possible. The following items, when the circumstances under which the discussion conducted can be disclosed, will be May 7, 2021, or when the need for confidentiality no longer exists, whichever is later. The public is excluded from said meeting and further notices dispensed with. Is there a motion now to enter into executive session?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Caldwell-Wilson, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle? Mr. Michelle?
George?
He might have muted himself.
Yeah. Mr. Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
And Ms. McBride?
Yes.
And this meeting is now closed to the public. It will reconvene at 9 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good night.
So we're gonna hang up.
They don't know yet. I think they came shop. They have a vehicle, the car. The male is dead. The female's hanging.
Edward Kaloji signing back in.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloji.
Back in.
That's a little. Okay, I'm going to start the recording, and then we will call the roll, and the session will reconvene.
This call is being
Okay. We are reconvening from executive session. We're going to call the roll. Mr. Blakely.
Present.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson.
Present.
Mr. Harrison.
Present.
Mr. Michelle.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Vaughn.
Present.
Ms. McBride.
Present.
And being presented for council's consideration is resolution number 20-247, which is a resolution of censure as to the conduct of Councilwoman Robin Vaughn. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Blakely, seconded by Mr. Harrison. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the vote?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Mr. Blakely?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Michelle?
No.
Mr. Rodriguez?
No.
Ms. Vaughn?
No.
Ms. McBride?
No.
And resolution number 20-247 has failed. There being no further business before this body, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed?
Or.
And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for your service, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Harris.
very much, everyone. Have a nice evening.
All righty.
Wishing you the best.
I got you.
the organ.